There is a long-running joke among NASCAR fans called even year Logano. The idea is simple. Joey Logano spends the first half of a season looking ordinary, sometimes looking finished, and then in even-numbered years he suddenly transforms into the most dangerous driver in the sport at exactly the moment it counts. It's the kind of thing fans post about as a laugh, except it isn't really a joke. Since 2014, Logano has either won the Cup championship or reached the championship round in every single even-numbered year. 3 titles, 2018, 2022, and 2024, all of them even. And Saturday night at Richmond, in the year 2026, he beat Chase Briscoe by less than 0.4 of a second for his second win in the last 4 races. After a stretch where he had won once in 56 starts. He was 20th in points at the halfway mark of this season. He's now 9th. So it's happening again, right on schedule. But here's the part almost nobody is talking about, and it's the reason this year is genuinely different from every other even year in that streak. The format that made even year Logano possible in the first place no longer exists. NASCAR changed it. So today, let's break down the surge, whether the pattern is actually real, and why 2026 might be the year the trick finally stops working. Stay with me. Welcome back to Freedom Line News, the channel where we don't just chase the drama, we break down what really happened. If you're new, hit subscribe. This community is growing every week. Let's get into it. To appreciate what just happened, you have to remember how genuinely grim 2026 looked for the number 22 team. And it was grim. Through the opening 20 races of this season, Joey Logano had exactly 2 top 5 finishes and 6 top 10s. 2 top 5s in 20 races for a 3-time champion at Team Penske. 6 weeks ago, he was sitting 18th in the standings carrying a 45-race winless streak. At the halfway point of the season, he fell as low as 20th. Earlier in the year, he went through what was described as the worst 3-race stretch of his entire Cup career, with an average finish hovering around 21. And the criticism wasn't unfair. His own teammate Ryan Blaney was running 4th in points in the same equipment. Analysts were openly asking whether this was decline rather than a slump. Logano himself was blunt about it in a way I genuinely respect. He talked about the Mondays after a bad race, where you look inward before anything else, and said those are real conversations you have with yourself. No spin, no excuses. Just a driver admitting it was hard. And then it turned. At North Wilkesboro on the 19th of July, Logano didn't just win. He obliterated the field, leading 323 of 450 laps to finally end the drought. And Saturday night at Richmond, he did it again, in a completely different way. This one was a grind rather than a demolition. He led 95 of the 400 laps, but he did it across 6 separate stints, trading the lead back and forth all night. He won the second stage. He got ahead of Briscoe when the 2 of them made their final green flag stops with 39 laps remaining, and then made the decisive move around Christopher Bell on fresher tires with 25 to go. And then he held on. Briscoe, who led more laps than anybody in the race with 171, came charging in the closing stages and got to within 0.4 of a second at the line. Logano admitted afterward that the 19 car was better than his on that final run, and that he was simply managing his tires to protect the gap. It was his 39th career win, his 3rd at Richmond, and it ended a 9-year drought at that particular racetrack, a place where he said his team had brought a great car for 5 straight races without ever capitalizing. His word for it was redemption. And the raw numbers now read like this: 2 wins in the last 4 races, after a single win in his previous 56 starts, and a climb from 20th to 9th in the championship standings. Now let's take the even year thing seriously for a moment, because it's easy to dismiss as internet noise, and I don't think it entirely deserves that. The core fact is verifiable. Since 2014, every even-numbered season has ended with Logano either lifting the trophy or racing for it in the final round. His championships came in 2018, 2022, and 2024. And the shape of those runs is remarkably consistent. He doesn't dominate the summer, he peaks in the autumn. In his most recent title season, he won 3 of the final 10 races. In 2018, he entered the playoffs without being anyone's obvious favorite. then won the round of 8 opener at Martinsville and rode that into a championship at Homestead. His crew chief, Paul Wolfe, put it plainly after Richmond, "They've seen it a lot over the years, once he gets that confidence." But let's be honest about the other side too, because the skeptical reading has real force. 3 championships across 4 even years is genuinely impressive, but reached the championship round is a much softer bar than won the title. And stacking those 2 outcomes together to build a perfect streak is exactly the kind of thing that makes a pattern look tidier than it is. Nobody has ever offered a mechanism for why the calendar year should matter. Teams don't sandbag for 18 months. What's far more likely is that Logano and Paul Wolfe are simply an excellent pairing who develop their car through a season and are historically brilliant under playoff pressure, and that the even-year framing is a coincidence we've all enjoyed noticing. Which brings us to the thing that makes 2026 genuinely different, and this is the point I haven't seen anybody properly connect. Every previous version of even-year Logano ran on a specific piece of machinery, the old playoff format. Win and you're in meant a mediocre regular season cost you almost nothing, as long as you won 1 race somewhere. And multi-race elimination rounds meant that a driver who peaked late could win a single round opener and vault himself into the next stage regardless of how the rest of the year had gone. That structure rewarded exactly one skill: timing your peak. And nobody in the modern era has timed a peak better than Joey Logano. NASCAR has now scrapped both of those things. The 2026 chase does away with win and you're in, and it does away with the multi-race playoff rounds. The field is set by points position, which means the mechanism that historically converted a Logano hot streak into a championship has been removed from the sport. Analysts saw this coming back in March, warning that under the new system, a few bad races early would simply bury you in the points rather than being erased by one well-timed win. And here's the genuinely fascinating part. Logano has already survived the first half of that problem. Despite the worst start of his career, he's climbed to 9th, so he isn't going to miss the chase. The bad races didn't bury him, but surviving the format and beating it are 2 different things. In 2024, he clawed back from deep in the standings, and the structure allowed him to convert that into a title. In 2026, the same surge earns him a good seed and nothing more. He'll have to be the best driver over a stretch of races rather than the best driver on a handful of critical afternoons, and that is a meaningfully harder assignment, even for him. So where does this leave the picture with 2 races remaining before the chase field locks in? Logano is 9th and safe. Team Penske as an organization looks genuinely resurgent. Ryan Blaney took the pole at Richmond and won the opening stage, his series-leading 6th stage win of the year, and the 2 Penske Fords combined to control enormous chunks of that race. And the next stop could hardly suit Logano better. The series heads to New Hampshire, a track where he won his very first Cup race back in 2009, and one of the few venues analysts have consistently rated him as elite at even during this year's slump, alongside Phoenix and Martinsville. If the surge is real rather than a pair of good nights, New Hampshire is where it should show up again. But the honest caveat stands, and Logano's own camp has acknowledged it. The Ford effort still has real work to do on intermediate tracks, and that weakness doesn't disappear because he won 2 short-track races. So the question going into the chase isn't whether Joey Logano is dangerous again. Saturday night settled that. The question is whether a driver whose entire championship reputation was built on peaking at the perfect moment can still win a title in a format that no longer rewards perfect timing. That's a genuinely open question, and we're about to find out the answer in real time. So now I want to hear from you. Is even-year Logano a real phenomenon, or just a fun coincidence we've all talked ourselves into believing? And can he win a 4th championship in a format specifically designed to reward season-long consistency instead of the late surge he's built his whole career on? Drop it in the comments, hit like, and subscribe to Freedom Line News, where we cover every NASCAR story with the detail it actually deserves. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.